Welcome to another edition of Access All Areas. We'll take a look at the week that's just gone, take a look at round 7. Damian, Barrett with you, and as always on a Friday, four-time Premiership coach, player of the century, Leigh Matthews. Leigh, as I welcome you, are you more confused today than you were yesterday about the sliding rule?
Oh no, I think you're slightly more clear. In other words, if you slide into an opposition player, it'll be a free kick, but probably not reportable as long as you're going at the footy while you're doing it.
Yep. Joining us today on Access All Areas is the coach of the nearly unbeaten Essendon Football Club, James Hird, who does join us fresh from a training session today. James, we're going to talk about Stuart Cramery later in the show, about how he's progressed as a footballer, but more importantly, will he play against the Eagles this week?
Definitely. Damian got through training well this morning, and a massive improvement from Saturday night, Saturday afternoon last week against the Lions, where we all thought he was in serious trouble with an ACL, but the doctors and the medical staff convinced us that it's just a knock, and he's a very, very lucky boy.
Must have a great resilience because he looked pretty awkward last week.
He's a very strong, powerful boy, Stu, and he handles injury very well. But this one, his leg went 3 different ways, but fortunately his tissues held up, and it just shows how strong he is.
Such a fine line that, isn't it? That you can actually, could have been a season-ending knee injury with just a slightly different angle. It's a fine line. It's
a very fine line for Stu and for us. I mean, without Michael Hurley this week, he's our key forward, and we need him having a significant role in our season to be competitive this year. So it's good for him and great for our footy club.
Yep. Sliding, AFL yesterday, as you well know, put out a new version of how it's going to tackle this issue. Can I get your take on where it's got to and where it's going to go as a result of this new look, where umpires this week will be encouraged to pay free kicks against it?
Yeah, look, I mean, from our point of view, we're waiting to see how the umpires interpret it and see what happens. But there's no doubt you wouldn't want to be coming from 20 metres away and 5 metres off the ball start to slide into a play, because there'll be a free kick given. And I think that was the instant that Adam Goodes got reported for, similar to that. The difficult ones are the Lindsay Thomas one, where he sort of seems to go to ground to collect the ball and collects Gary Rowan's foot, which is very unfortunate for Gary. But in the heat of the moment, you go to ground. You have to be very careful when you go to ground now that your feet aren't out in front of you and you don't take out a player, because I think that's what the AFL is saying is a free kick now.
Yep. Have you addressed it with your players as a result of what the AFL put out yesterday?
No, we haven't. We haven't mentioned it. We think it's better to wait until we see how the interpretation goes, just because there's so much a player's got to think about when they're going for the ball, and we'd like them to, they'll read about it, they'll know about it, they'll talk about it themselves, but we'd just like to get them concentrate on the game ahead and going at the ball as hard as they can.
Leigh, what's your take on it? This is the latest step in trying to deal with this problem. What's your take on what the AFL's done?
Well, I think the AFL want the game, if you can, to be an upright game. Like, they don't want players sliding on the foot and jumping on the footy. And it was really interesting in this whole debate. I mean, none of us have read the rule book, but there is a rule book interpretation which says the same as, and here it is here. If you make this has been here forever.
Yep.
But what it clearly says is any contact above the shoulders is a free kick, whether it's accidental or not, and any contact below the knees of an opponent should be a free kick as well. So really all that's happened is that rule is actually said, hey, listen, we haven't really been applying this rule, so we should apply it. Like, my understanding might be that if you dive head first at the footy, and in taking the footy you go through another player's legs, that'll be a free kick against you.
Yep. Because
you can't actually take a player below the knee. So that's something that I think I wasn't aware of until about a week ago, that rule existed.
It's certainly changed the way there's going to be the way the game's being interpreted by the umpires. And I think one of the big issues with the game, the way it is now, is the congestion around the ball, with all sides trying to compress the ground, means it's going to be very difficult to not make contact with players below the knees, because of just this could be 20, 30 players within a 10, 15 metre radius.
What do you see happening, James? I mean, you obviously the new age, new wave coach, the game's played differently than it was when you were playing. With this new rule now, where umpires are going to be focusing on this particular issue, what do you see happening this weekend and beyond?
I really don't know in terms of how they're going to interpret it, but I think that if someone does want to slide and someone does want to go to ground, they're going to be in a position that if they take someone's legs out, it'll be a definite free kick. So that is the way it's been ruled, which is probably going to change the way the game is played around certain contests.
Do you mind it being, it's not rules on the run, because as we can see there, it's in the rule book, but it's interpretation on the run. Are you okay with that?
Look, it's difficult to change interpretation halfway through a year. I can see they've reacted to some serious injuries, which nobody wants in football. But as long as we play this game, and it's a combative type game, we're going to get injuries, and some of them are going to be serious, as unfortunate that is. So, I know there's people out there very concerned about an interpretation coming that's different for the next 16 rounds it was for the first 6.
Can I ask you about a big picture situation? Like in all the time that I've been involved in footy, the try-by video came in the mid-80s. So everything that's happened over about the last 2 or 3 decades is to try and make the game safer for the participants. But it seems to me that as the conditioning, as the full-time footy operations have got players more powerful and the courage, I mean, what I would say was average courage 20 years ago is sort of normal now. I mean, they're just so brave. They're congesting around the footy. Like the pure danger of playing at the elite level seems to me to be higher than it ever has.
Definitely. I think it's a much more dangerous game to play at the elite level with just all the bodies around. And they're bigger, they're stronger than they ever have been. And that's because we all want to get better and we want to compete. I mean, you watch the way that the Brisbane Lions played back in the early 2000s, the way Geelong played. It's a combative style of football. And if you can't compete in that combat style of football, I just don't think you can be a good team anymore.
So do you see it getting worse than what we've experienced this year? I mean, some horrific injuries. Sometimes it's a perception thing, it's worse in other years. But what you've just both said there, that it's never been, the requirements on playing this game have been more from a tough perspective. Is it going to get worse?
Look, I think that the welfare of our players is a serious issue and one that we've got to keep exploring. And I know the AFL is trying to change the rules on the bench. They have changed the rules on the bench to try and look after player welfare. But whatever decision gets made, player welfare needs to be right up there in the chain of the decision making.
And the one thing I'd say categorically, if we played footy now with the modern athletes, the modern game style, with the rules of the mid-80s, players would be getting killed.
Yeah. Right. Definitely.
So the game is trying to make it safer, but it's almost like as you've made the game safer, the game has become more dangerous because of the ballistic power of the athlete. So it's an ongoing battle that will be played out into the years ahead, I reckon.
Yeah, and you look at NFL football where they're even more powerful and more combative, and they get serious injuries, probably more serious than they had 10, 20 years ago. We're trying to make our players more powerful, stronger, run longer, all those type of physical attributes, which, if you hit someone with 100 kilos, you're going to hurt them more than if you hit them with 90 kilos. It's
hard to put a line on this conversation in a summary form, but if you were to summarise what we've just talked about and where it goes, what do we need to do as an industry to get it better?
It's difficult for me to say because I'm worried about trying to prepare our team to beat every other team, and so I'm going to try and make our players bigger and stronger. Now, that might not be in the health of the game, but it's the health of the Essendon Football Club making us better so we don't get hurt.
Just put up with the injuries, basically.
Well, I think when you talk about injuries, and we always talk about numbers of injuries at clubs and we talk about, this got an injury plague, but you've got to remember this, every time someone gets injured, it's a personality, it's a person, and that puts their career backwards. So we never like to put up with injuries, and we would hope there'd be no injuries, but this game is going to throw up a lot of injuries because of the style of game.
That's what I think people have to understand, that the people at the AFL are trying to minimise the danger to players, and they'll continue to do that, but the clubs are trying to win games of footy.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily exactly on the same page.
James, you made a bit of a play for Travis Cloke at the end of 2010. He's out of contract again. There's clubs queuing up. Can I get your take on him, and will you be a player for Travis Cloke for next year?
No, we won't. No, we won't be a player for Travis Cloke. We're very happy with our key forwards and key defenders. So, but in saying that, he's a sensational player, the best contested mark player in the competition, and gives us some serious headaches when we go to playing against Collingwood.
Because the big difference is, I guess, in that year or two, Hurley's turned up, and Stuart Crameri, who it seems like there's a little bit of a changeover going on. Who are the dominant goal kickers? It's interesting, the leading goal kickers. You would have got big odds that Walker, Hawkins and Crameri would be the 3 leaders after round 6. So, in a way, they're the new generation. And Crameri, I suspect, when you went to Essendon 18 months ago, you probably hardly heard the name.
No, I hadn't, Leigh. I didn't know anything about him. And I've had this conversation with Stu that when we got there, it was sort of a bit hit or miss whether we kept him on the list. We thought we'd give him a go because some people spoke very highly about his physical condition at the club. And he was a half-back flanker midfielder when we got there, and we just watched him run all day at training, beat blokes in contested marking situations and do what he's doing here at training. And we thought, well, let's throw him on the forward line. And exceptional 18 months from Stu, and his real challenge now is to get better and better and refine the talents that he's got. The
point that you mentioned, I guess you don't know as an observer, that he's a really good long-distance endurance athlete, apparently.
Oh, he's a fantastic, aerobic athlete, great strength-wise as well. There aren't many guys, 96, 97 kilos who can run the way he can run, and that's why he's so hard to play on.
He's made for forwards who play front half. They don't play out of the goal square. They've got to run.
That's right.
He's made for the modern
He's made for the modern game, and when the game was more a positional game and you sat at full forward, maybe that advantage wouldn't be there because he couldn't run run. But I think the type of player he is, he would have been a very good player in any era.
Yep. Another modern day footballer, another recruiting question, by the way. Patrick Dangerfield, Geelong has been linked to him. Can I ask you your thoughts on potentially him joining Essendon if he was to come back to Melbourne?
Yeah, look, we haven't had conversations with Patrick. At the moment, we're very intent on getting our list signed up. You know, we've got Paddy Ryder to sign up, we've got Brent Stanton to sign up, and we've got Angus Monfries to sign up. Right. We have to get our players signed as quickly as we can. Yep. If there's any money left over, which I doubt there will be, then we'll go looking. But our priority is our own players and developing those players that we have. And after we get our list signed, then we'll go and have a look.
From a list management point of view, just the philosophy of actually going out and getting like a 700,000 or 800,000 marquee player for a club that's around the action like you guys are, not bottom third, but around the action. It's you might get the talent, but it's going to create enormous problems if you're any good as a team.
I think so. I think it. You know, look, if Patrick Dangerfield came to our club, it'd improve our list. But what you have to give for that and what you create in your club, I don't think is sometimes worth what you get, because you're better to build your own. And I think that's our philosophy.
State of Origin comes up every year by way of discussion.
Usually June.
Usually June.
It's coming up May this year.
May. Some coaches, or most coaches, I would imagine, wouldn't like it. Can I get your views on the potential for it to be reintroduced?
Yeah, I just wonder how it would work. Yeah. I mean, we had a conversation not 3 minutes ago about the way the game's going, the injuries in the game, and how hard it is on the players. You throw another game in there, which the clubs don't control, and I don't think there's any club out there that would not go into a State of Origin game really, really nervous, knowing that Chris Judd's going to be rested twice. We're going to rest some players along the year. Geelong won a premiership by resting their best players over a period. So if you're going to rest them, why would you go and play a State of Origin
Maybe we could actually play the State of Origin the same day and just release them from club duties for the weekend, like they used to in the 70s.
They did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as long as they don't take any of our players.
The Coaches Association has got a growing voice in footy. Would you actually vote, or personally, would you vote against it if it was put to you to not have it?
You'd have to see how it looked. I mean, if it was a bigger break and it took other games out of the way and maybe took a NAB Cup position, or end of the year when players had finished, you'd think about it. But if it was this week and then guys had to back up 6 days later, well, I'd be very nervous about how we're going. We've got so many injuries at the moment that to then release Joe Watson, Brent Stanton, Paddy Ryder, whoever they're going to take.
It's scary, isn't it, for a coach?
That would really scare us.
Yeah. Eagles this weekend. North Melbourne had issues last week with head-high tackles and ruck infringements. What have you told your players, and how are you approaching this game against the Eagles on that front? Yeah,
we've spoken to our players about getting the ball first, win the ball first, going hard, because that's what the Eagles are very good at. They get to the ball first. We want to get there before them. And when they tackle hard and tackle low and make it stick. You see a lot of the tackles that have been head high have actually been shrugged off. Now, if you tackle someone properly and stick the tackle, you shouldn't be able to shrug that tackle off.
It's usually, isn't it, that the player being tackled, like sort of just collapsing his knees a bit to go lower. I mean, really, you say to the tackle, hey, go in lower. Like, you bend your knees as well. Yeah. The idea is to keep below their head height.
It's our responsibility to tackle properly. And that's how we're teaching our players, and hopefully if we tackle properly we'll get some free kicks.
Yep. James, thank you today for your insight. Leigh, thank you.
Thank you once again, Damian.
And Leigh, you and I will be back next Friday, where Damian Hardwick, Richmond coach, will join us in the Access All Areas chair. Don't forget, on Monday, Luke Darcy and myself will be back to bring you all the news from the weekend's action. But from us, right now, it's goodbye.